Leadership is not proven in moments of comfort, applause, or celebration. Leadership is tested when systems fail, when promises collapse, when people are confused, afraid, and deeply uncertain about tomorrow. It is in crisis that the true nature of authority is revealed. Anyone can speak well when things are working smoothly. Anyone can smile when the economy is stable, when borders are open, when families feel safe. But when the pressure comes, when hardship increases, when people begin to cry in silence, leadership is no longer about position, title, or influence. It instantly becomes about responsibility, integrity, and raw courage. In times of crisis, people do not look for complex explanations. They look for clear direction. They do not need propaganda. They need the truth. They do not need excuses. They need solutions. A leader who hides behind speeches and policies while people suffer has already failed, even if he still holds the title and the power. Silence in the face of widespread pain is not wisdom. Denial in the presence of undeniable reality is not strength. When leaders pretend that everything is fine while families are breaking, while citizens are stranded, while hope is fading, they are not protecting stability. They are actively destroying trust. Every crisis is a mirror. It reflects the heart of the leadership. It immediately exposes priorities. It shows whether power is being used for service or for self-preservation. When resources are hoarded, when voices are suppressed, when truth is manipulated, crisis will amplify these weaknesses for all to see, and the people will always see. You cannot hide character in difficult seasons. Pressure will always reveal what is inside. Great leadership understands that authority is a trust, not a weapon. It is borrowed from the people and must be returned in the form of protection, justice, and compassion. When leaders forget this fundamental idea, they begin to rule by fear instead of by vision. They begin to control instead of to inspire. They begin to speak at people instead of genuinely listening to them. And slowly, without even realizing it, they disconnect from the very lives they were called to serve. In moments of national pain, economic collapse, social unrest, or displacement, leaders must rise above personal interest. They must speak with absolute clarity. They must act with genuine humility. They must admit mistakes when necessary. They must be willing to change course when the evidence demands it. The strength is not stubbornness. Strength is the ability to adjust for the sake of the people. A leader who listens during crisis earns loyalty. A leader who empathizes builds resilience. A leader who stands with the weak secures the future for everyone. But a leader who isolates himself, who surrounds himself only with praise, who rejects all honest feedback, and who silences opposition is actively building his own eventual downfall. History is filled with examples of powerful individuals who ignored clear warning signs, dismissed public suffering, and trusted only their small inner circle. They truly believed their position made them untouchable. But leadership that refuses accountability eventually collapses under the weight of its own pride. When people suffer, leadership must be visible. Not in luxury halls, not in distant offices, but right there in the realities of daily struggle. Among the displaced, among the unemployed, among the confused, among the fearful. Its presence communicates more than any speech ever could. Speaks louder than all the promises in the world. Sacrifice carries more weight than slogans. A crisis is not an interruption of leadership. It is the examination of leadership. It is the season where values are tested, intentions are measured, and legacies are formed. What a leader does in dark moments will define how history remembers him. Silence will be recorded. Delay will be remembered. Indifference will be judged. True leadership does not wait for applause. It responds instantly to pain. It does not protect its own image at the expense of lives. It protects lives even if the image suffers a blow. It understands that authority without empathy becomes oppression, and power without accountability becomes destruction. When trust is fundamentally broken, power begins to decay, even if it still looks strong on the outside. Authority does not survive on fear alone. It survives on public confidence, credibility, and conviction. The moment people stop believing in the sincerity of their leaders, the foundation of that leadership starts to crack. You may still control the institutions, the armies, the systems, and the media, but once you lose the hearts of the people, you have already lost the future. Trust is not built by force. It is built by consistency. It is built when words and actions perfectly agree. It is built when promises are honored, when truth is protected, and when leaders remain truly accountable. But when leaders speak one thing and do another, when they manipulate information, when they prioritize personal gain over the public good, trust begins to die slowly, quietly, invisibly. And many leaders do not notice it until it is far too late. People may remain silent for a long time, but silence does not mean satisfaction. Silence often means deep disappointment. Silence means people are watching, observing, recording patterns. They are measuring integrity. They are comparing words with results. And when they discover that leadership has become self-centered, dishonest, or disconnected, their loyalty begins to decisively weaken. Power that is not supported by trust becomes fragile. It becomes defensive. It becomes aggressive. It begins to rely on intimidation instead of genuine inspiration. Control replaces confidence. Surveillance replaces relationship. Punishment replaces persuasion. And every time this happens, leadership moves further away from legitimacy. When people no longer trust, they stop believing in the future that the leadership is presenting. They stop investing emotionally. They stop participating actively. They withdraw their energy, their creativity, their cooperation. They may still obey the rules, but their hearts are no longer involved. And leadership without the hearts of the people becomes empty authority. Trust is also broken when leaders refuse transparency. When they hide facts, when they distort reality, when they pretend that problems do not even exist. People are not foolish. They live with the consequences every single day. They feel the inflation. They experience the unemployment. They see the closed borders. They witness the broken systems. When leaders deny what people are suffering, it creates a massive emotional distance. And emotional distance eventually becomes resistance. Once trust is damaged, every decision is questioned. Every policy is doubted. Every announcement is suspected. Even good intentions are misunderstood. Even sincere efforts are rejected. Because broken trust changes perception. It filters everything through disappointment. Strong leadership understands that reputation is not managed by public relations. It is managed by character. You cannot repair credibility with more speeches. You repair it with consistent sacrifice, honest communication, and visible reform. You repair it by admitting failure. You repair it by correcting injustice. You repair it by choosing people over pride. When leaders refuse to rebuild trust, they isolate themselves. They surround themselves only with praise. They reject criticism, appease alternative voices, and slowly they begin to live in an artificial reality where everything seems fine while the nation is quietly unraveling. History shows that governments and leaders rarely fall suddenly. They collapse gradually through loss of confidence, through erosion of loyalty, through weakening belief, through growing skepticism, through silent withdrawal of support. The greatest danger to leadership is not protest. It is indifference. It is when people stop caring. It is when they stop hoping. It is when they stop believing that change is possible. At that point, authority may remain, but influence is absolutely gone. Power that ignores trust is like a building without a foundation. It may stand for a season. It may look impressive. It may intimidate observers, but one serious storm, one major crisis, one strong wave of public awakening, and everything begins to crumble. Physical borders may be closed by policies, politics, and fear, but hope is not something that can be locked behind gates or controlled by soldiers. You can restrict movement, you can deny access, you can limit opportunities, but you cannot imprison the human desire for dignity, safety, and a better future. Hope is stronger than walls. It is stronger than visas. It is stronger than barriers. It is planted in the heart of every human being by design, and no system can ever erase it. When people are trapped in uncertainty, stranded in foreign lands, separated from opportunity, or cut off from progress, the greatest danger is not the restriction itself, it's despair. Once hope dies, productivity dies, creativity dies, courage dies, vision dies, and when hope dies, people begin to accept suffering as normal. They begin to normalize limitation. They begin to believe that they deserve less. That is when oppression becomes complete. Great leadership understands that even when physical movement is limited, emotional and psychological freedom must be protected. People must still be able to dream. Must still be able to plan. Still be able to imagine a future beyond the present pain. Leaders who crush hope are more dangerous than those who close borders, because borders can be reopened, but broken spirits are much harder to restore. Throughout history, people have crossed deserts, oceans, wars, and empires, not just with their physical bodies, but with their faith in tomorrow. Refugees, migrants, prisoners, exiles, and displaced families have survived not because conditions were favorable, but because hope refused to die. Hope whispered that this is not the end. Hope declared that suffering is not permanent. Hope reminded them that seasons always change. When systems fail and doors close, hope becomes the inner passport that keeps people moving forward. It keeps students studying even when jobs are scarce. It keeps parents working even when wages are low. It keeps young people learning even when opportunities seem distant. It keeps nations alive even when circumstances are hostile. But hope does not survive on slogans. It survives on evidence. It is sustained by justice, fairness, transparency, and opportunity. Leaders must feed hope with action. They must water it with truth. They must protect it with policies that empower, not policies that imprison. When leaders ignore this core responsibility, hopelessness spreads faster than any crisis. A hopeless population becomes easy to manipulate, easy to control, easy to divide. When people no longer believe in tomorrow, they will trade freedom for temporary comfort. They will accept lies for emotional relief. They will follow any voice that promises escape. That is why preserving hope is not just emotional work, it is strategic leadership. Borders may limit where people can go, but they should never limit what people can become. Education, skills, innovation, and moral strength must continue to grow, even in restricted environments. Nations that invest in human potential during hardship emerge much stronger when doors reopen. Hope also demands personal responsibility. Even when systems are unjust, individuals must guard their inner world. You must refuse to let bitterness replace vision. You must refuse to let frustration destroy discipline. You must refuse to let delay cancel destiny. Waiting seasons are not wasted seasons when hope is alive. When leaders and citizens work together to protect hope, crises become classrooms, restrictions become refinement, delays become preparation. And when the time of opening comes, those who preserved hope are ready to rise, rebuild, and lead with wisdom and strength. Hardship has a strange way of awakening what comfort keeps soundly asleep. In seasons of ease, many people live on autopilot. They follow routines. They accept systems without questioning them. They adapt to injustice because it does not yet touch them deeply. But when suffering arrives, when pressure increases, when life becomes uncomfortable, something begins to stir inside the human spirit. Pain becomes an alarm. Difficulty becomes a messenger. Crisis becomes a voice that says, wake up, think again, rise higher. Suffering strips life of illusion. It removes false security. It exposes weak foundations. It shows people what truly matters and what never did. When everything is stable, it is easy to ignore truth. It is easy to avoid responsibility. It is easy to postpone necessary change. But when hardship comes, delay becomes dangerous. Silence becomes costly. Passivity becomes destructive. People begin to realize that survival requires awareness, courage, and immediate action. Many of the strongest voices in history were born in seasons of pain. They were not raised in luxury. They were refined in adversity. They were sharpened by struggle. Pressure forced them to think deeper, pray harder, learn faster, and act wiser. Without suffering, their potential might have remained hidden. Hardship became the womb that gave birth to purpose. They began to question systems. They began to examine leadership. They began to analyze policies. They began to ask why things are the way they are. This questioning is not rebellion. It is awakening. It is the mind refusing to remain asleep in injustice. It is the conscience refusing to be silenced by comfort. Pain also breaks fear. Many people remain quiet, not because they agree, but because they are afraid. Afraid of consequences, afraid of rejection, afraid of loss. But when suffering becomes intense, fear loses its power. When life becomes unbearable, silence becomes more painful than speaking. At that moment, courage is born. Hardship teaches people the value of unity. In comfort, people are divided by pride, class, and competition. In suffering, they discover that they deeply need each other. They learn cooperation, they learn empathy, they learn solidarity. They realize their survival is collective, not merely individual. Crisis turns strangers into allies and neighbors into family. Suffering also refines character. It reveals patience, tests integrity. It exposes selfishness. It strengthens endurance. People who pass through hardship with wisdom become emotionally mature. They learn resilience. They develop depth. They gain perspective. They stop being shallow in their thinking and careless in their decisions. However, hardship does not automatically produce courage. It produces what people allow it to produce. The same pain that awakens one person can destroy another. The difference is mindset. Those who interpret suffering as punishment become bitter. Those who interpret it as preparation become stronger. Great leadership and great citizens understand how to convert pain into progress. They refuse to waste adversity. They extract lessons from difficulty. They build systems from scars. They turn tears into strategies. They transform wounds into wisdom. When suffering awakens courage, people no longer wait for permission to think. They no longer depend on others to act. They take responsibility for their future. They invest in knowledge. They organize constructively. They speak intelligently. They participate actively. A nation that learns from hardship becomes dangerous to mediocrity. A people refined by struggle cannot be easily deceived. They have seen failure. They have tasted loss. They have survived disappointment. And because of that, they develop.